Artful Periscope is brought to you by Larry Davidson Productions.
I'm Larry Davidson. Welcome back to the podcast, Artful Periscope. Chris Ciulla is an audiobook publisher, narrator, and coach, video game voice guy, and I didn't know this, boxing analyst. He has...
Yep, I brought a boxing shirt today.
I saw that. He has 50 audiobook credits, including Where It Hurts by my friend Reed Farrell Coleman, and
Sure.
The Stranger Inside by Lisa Unger. And also, this is very impressive, also did the audiobook for What Makes Sammy Run by Bud Schulberg. So my friend, Thank you so much for joining us.
No worries. Yeah, I think you said 50. It's over 500.
Oh, all right. Thank you. I'm going to check.
So my life is, it's more inundation from audio, from all angles.
All right. Thank you for the correction.
Sure.
It's a mistake number one, but we're going to leave it in anyway
Handles.
because I'm human. So in the previous segment, we talked about personal journeys and the journeys that the author writes about in his book, 1 and 4. Let's go back to you in terms of your journey along the way to becoming an audiobook narrator. This is the first time I had one on the podcast, so don't spare anything. Talk about your own personal journey.
Sure. So, I've been an actor for a long time now. I left my beard on here for you so I could look my age. When I shave it, sometimes I look a little younger. So I'm almost 50.
All right.
And when I was about 25, I moved from Boston to Los Angeles. I had been performing already for about 4 or 5 years. Decided to move to a big market, and that was around 2001, when 9/11 happened. And even before 9/11, New York was pretty dead because they didn't have any tax incentives for
Right.
people to stay for productions on TV and film. So went out to LA. And when you go to LA as an actor like that, you pursue commercial work,
Right.
you pursue film work, and you pursue TV work. And then in about 2004, a couple of years in, I figured out that, there's this voice stuff out here. I could actually perform with my voice in a bunch of different categories. So then I got some demos made in commercial, video game, and animation, and started pursuing that stuff. A couple of years after that, I got my first agent in voiceover, but I still wasn't really doing well in any of the particular categories, both in on-camera or voiceover. I wasn't earning enough union money to get pension years.
Okay.
So I was walking around in a Barnes & Noble in 2009 in Woodland Hills, and it was probably 155 degrees outside. So that was the largest area that was air conditioned. And I looked at these like boxes on a shelf, and they weren't pages, they weren't books. They were just like CD cases. And I said, what are these things? What are these monoliths that are sitting on this shelf? And it was CD cases of audiobooks,
Okay.
books on CD. And I looked at one. It was a John Grisham novel, and Michael Beck had narrated it. And I said, Michael Beck, he was Swan in The Warriors.
Right.
That's one of my favorite movies as a kid. And he was in Xanadu and with Olivia Newton-John. And then he did a couple of Matlocks, I think, and maybe in the Heat of the Night. And then he didn't do anything after that. He became an audiobook narrator and has been consistently working in audiobooks. So that was the first kind of check on my mind that, okay, this could be another potential category for me to make money as an actor.
So I don't know. All right. I didn't mean to cut you off. You can fill them back in. But I'm a big fan of Ariana Grande. And I'm going to tell you why, because I watch her a lot of time on SNL. And what she does is she can mimic other singers' voices with body language. So when you're trying to do other voices, how important is for you to understand the potential? Because we're hearing it and we're reading it, but we're not seeing it. Is it important to understand the body language of the characters to get the point across when you're narrating these books?
Yes. It all depends, though, on the style and technique, the craft of the particular narrator. So there are, first off, some of us as narrators are true actors. We come from an acting background where we've studied under a teacher that studied under Uta Hagen or Sanford Meisner, Stella Adler. So we have a pure method of what we get from point A to point B when we want to create a three-dimensional character. Some people are just good readers. They
Okay.
read a book
Right.
and you like hearing it and it sounds good. So, and to be honest, the bottom line when it comes to people listening is it good?
Okay.
Right? Is it a palatable a work that I'm listening to and do I believe what's happening? Am I immersed in the story? I'm an actor though. So where I go is I go for three dimensionality. And what I like, especially if I'm able to communicate with the author that I'm working for, and sometimes you can when you work for publishers and producers all the time, sometimes you can't. But most of the time I can because I work it out. And I like to have them give me basically a performance from television or film
Okay.
that they think this particular character would be an essence of, a cousin of that particular character. So it allows me to have a shell of the character and their existence. And usually there's a chart with a bunch of different attitudes and experiences that particular character has gone through. And then it depends. And then it's my job. It's like a Cadbury egg, you know.
Oh yeah.
I've been given the shell of the egg, and now it's up to me to put the filling in as an actor. It's up to me to figure out the cause to that effect that you're seeing and hearing when I narrate a book in
So
that particular.
inside that egg are there local dialects?
Yes, absolutely. And I think for me, I came up as a sketch comic and an impressionist.
Okay.
So like I in the middle of the aughts and the early teens, so basically well, like 2005 to 2012, I did a lot of call-ins in sports radio as Chris Walken and William Shatner.
He's the
And
best.
and they would be able to predict in March Madness, the 5 versus the 12.
Right.
If it was an ACC matchup against the SEC, who was going to come out? Somehow Chris Walken knew what was going on in that particular matchup. So this is a skill set that I have that sometimes I tap into, and but a lot of it is more about originality. It's about it was dialects that you mentioned. So
Right.
the more books we do, the more accents we kind of have to pick up. And again, is that a skill set? So me as an actor, as an on-camera actor, if it was an on-camera job that had, say, 3 scenes and I was a recurring or a special guest star in a TV show, and I was making top of show for that show, like so I was the lead guest star
Right.
and I was the villain. The villain's Russian. I would get a dialect coach and make sure that I knew that Russian for that particular job. Me now, I've done so many Russian characters, I can do a Russian accent like that. I can do it without notice. So there's about 20 different accents, both continental United States and European accents that I can do without notice.
So here's the question, and then I'm going to ask you if you don't mind, can you do a walk-in for us? Because I would love that. When you look at American accents and British accents, when the Brits come over here, they nail American accents. You will never
Yes.
know they're British. When the Americans try to do other accents, whether it's Australian or British or
Sure.
Russian, they have a hard time with that. So
Yep.
why can't you probably understand this much more than I do? Why can't the American actors transfer over to foreign other accents, but the British, they just nail it every single time?
It's pretty easy. They practice it earlier and they practice it more. So they get to it earlier in the stages of their and most of the time their performance training is more standardized than ours.
Okay.
So we don't have too many people that are going to Juilliard, that are going to the AMDA, that are going to, going through a full college program and really being immersed in that entire program to feel it all and get all the electives. That's rare. Most people are jumping out early, getting into commercial work,
Yeah.
figuring out more brand stuff, and then having their lane, staying in their lane until they don't have to. And then when it becomes specialized, they try to grab that additional training, and sometimes it doesn't click as well as it should. Whereas those British actors are working on American, working on Australian at the very beginnings of their careers. So they know, okay, if I want to be a global actor, I need this palette of accents. And so their mouth their tongue, their palate is all trained to make those sounds. They understand placement a
Right.
lot better than we. There's just a lot more of the true vocal stuff that's more in their it's more in their briefcase.
All right.
That's my opinion.
So if you can, do us a Walken, but I'm going to tell you why that I really admire him. He has a background as a dancer.
Sure.
And you can see and hear in his voice the dancer coming through because it's rhythmic,
Yeah.
but it's unique to him. So how would you, if I was asking you a question, how would you respond as Christopher Walken?
There's musicality in what I say and what I do. Sometimes there's an unpredictability. Sometimes I think about how many consonants and vowels are in the word unpredictability. Guys, I got a fever. And the only prescription I could think of is more cowbell. Now, when I'm warm, and I'm warm for that,
yeah,
a lot better.
I got to say something.
But like that,
I can see you. They can see me. The final version will be audio only. But
when he goes down here, Larry, sometimes he talks like this. So you get a little bit of the length.
All right, so here's another thing. I just watched earlier today on MSNBC the interview with Al Pacino. And Al Pacino did like an hour and a half with another podcast I listened to called WTF. And you can hear as people's voices get older, they change. But I just love the fact that you can see the young Al Pacino in Scarface.
Young Al Pacino talked like this. He was all the way up here. Like he was a different guy.
And the Godfather, yeah.
The Godfather, different guy. And he got when he started doing if you go to Scent of a Woman.
Yes.
Like
that's the only time you get
like, oh boy. He's guttural. He's built that texture into his voice. And sometimes that's by practice too. Like even in Scarface, it wasn't there yet.
No.
And then he did a movie called Revolution that didn't do well.
No,
but was actually an epic.
Yeah.
About the American Revolution. And people forget about that. They'll see Al Pacino Revolution. Yeah. Yeah, he made it like an epic. It just didn't do well. And then he came back with some stuff. But then he my favorite movie is Heat.
Oh, look who's in it. Look who's in it. Look who's in that movie. And they're only face to face in a very small scene.
Sure, that was the first time together. Yeah,
first time together. So I know Tom Straw. Tom Straw wrote The Accidental Joe, and he was doing a major book tour, and I went to Thriller Fest 2004 in New York City because he was doing a panel, and I wanted to say hello. He had already done the interview, and he's in the middle of crisscrossing the country, and he's lost his voice, and he's going to record his own audiobook. And I'm talking to him, I can hear him, and the woman's coming up and saying, "This is what I do. I'm a voice coach, blah blah blah." And you know what she told him to do? And I don't know if this is true or not. She told him, "Suck on gummies when you start to record the book." So are there tips when you're not perfect for saving the voice and coming through? Because what you do takes a lot of stamina. Because I'm not, if you listen to audiobooks, it could be anywhere between 12 and 24 hours, whatever, depending on the book. I prefer having a book in my hand and reading, but there's now a huge audience for audiobooks. So in terms of tips, if people want to do what you do, is that a good tip? Suck on gummies.
Well, it's a good tip if your voice is, I wouldn't say gummies. I'd say, more like hard candy.
Okay.
Works better than gummies because gummies can get stuck. Pieces of gummy cannot go down.
Well, I don't know if he was talking about the CBD gummies, but I'll leave that out.
There's a particular type of gummy from a company called Grethers that are made in Switzerland. That's the kind of, because it's made of glycerin. Okay. So the glycerin easily breaks down and then goes down your throat, so it's nice and smooth for your throat. However, like I have acid reflux. So acid reflux, and it's not in my chest. It's just in my throat.
Oh, wow.
So it takes me a lot longer now that I'm 15 years into this career to get the throat warm and to make sure that I'm ready at the beginning of the book so that the listener doesn't understand, oh, this is the beginning of the book, because I can hear it. The whole thing has to stay consistent. You've got to be warm from the start, and then the listener can't know when you're switching from day one to day two.
Right.
You need to make sure that everything sounds very consistent throughout the entire book. A few ways to do that. I mean, for authors, I love when authors do, I'm a bit of an author whisperer. So if they want to read their own stuff, especially in nonfic and fiction, I suggest that authors don't read their own stuff unless they're an actor. If
Okay.
they're an actor, different story. They can obviously understand their characters and the depth of them. If they're not an actor and not a performer, if it's nonfiction and they've got a good instrument and they're really forward thinking when it comes to their brand, and people so they do a lot of TED Talks and they're on
Right.
podcasts all the time, then it's important that they do it. They should be reading their own stuff, but they need to be coached on 1 or 2 sessions so that they understand that their narrator self is different, a different entity
Right.
than their writer. And they want their narrator self, you want your writer self to be happy with your narrator self at the job that they're doing. And in order to do that, as long as you do a session or 2 with a coach like me, who gets you to understand a couple of different things. One is who you're talking to, having an actual conversation when you're narrating your nonfiction baby, when you're narrating the thing that you've been dedicated to for the last 6 to 8 years of your life. You want to make sure that this is a conversation and not a lecture. That this is you are not being, you're not giving a talk to 800 people. You have one person who you're talking to who has an earbud in their ear
Right.
in a very intimate setting. And so when you understand that, then it's a different story. Then how do I adjust my instrument so that I can work in a very quiet place? So it's not a lot is learning how much to project and how much not to project. We don't want to whisper, but you want to figure out how quiet you can possibly be in order to deliver an audiobook and have a conversation about your subject matter that you've written about.
Boy, that is great advice. Can I give you a hypothetical and challenge you? You said early in your days you were struggling in a sense to earn a living. If somebody
Sure.
comes to you right now and offers you a boatload of money to do a voiceover or narrate a political ad, but you don't agree with the content of the ad, it goes
Yep.
against the grain, but you can
Yep.
make a lot of money, would you do
Yep.
it?
Not in this cycle. Not in this cycle. Maybe if this was, say, 1992 and, I'd be 17 years old in 1992, wouldn't count. If it maybe in a different time, you would be able to separate your work, your VO work from your political stances.
Right.
But nowadays it's a situation where, and at least in my opinion, and I'm someone who worked for Congress, Larry. So
Okay.
I worked for Ed Markey, who was a senator from Massachusetts.
Oh, I know Ed Markey. Yeah.
Very liberal senator.
Yes.
But I'm not that liberal. I'm really down the line. I'm a true centrist who in the old days would be considered a Northeastern Republican.
Okay.
Like in the days of Bill Weld, Paul Cellucci. Paul Cellucci was one of my mentors at Boston College. So he unfortunately has passed away from ALS, but was a terrific guy and a terrific professor for me. I'm all about going across the aisle and making deals and trying to make everybody happy, and truly solving problems. Nowadays, on an extreme side of one side, it's about making people not feel so good, and that's that. So nowadays I would not. And I know who would ask me to do that job, and I would not be able to do that job for them. Not now. Hopefully in 8 years, when things really change up and maybe we've got 2 parties that are, truly still kind of talking to each other over the aisle and making good deals and trying to get good stuff going for the whole country, I would maybe spin back to that. But not now.
All right. In terms of having interesting conversations and talking to other people, if there is a book narrator version of the Algonquin Round Table, who would be there and who would you want to talk to? Past, present, well, mostly it's got to be the present, but even in a sense in terms of what's coming up in the future. If you could just sit and BS and talk to these people, have a drink, have a meal, who would be there?
Who would be there? I think Teddy Roosevelt.
Okay.
I mean, are we going for authors or just anybody?
Anybody.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody would be Alexander Hamilton,
Okay.
Teddy Roosevelt. Um, uh, who else would be at that place with me? James Michael Curley.
Why that name?
He's just a Boston legend. And so he was a populist before, you know, before all the Trumpism that we see now as a populist movement.
Okay.
He was the original populist guy. He was the original, where's the wind blowing?
Right.
I'm gonna go with that wind and no one's gonna know.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna do it so well that no one's gonna know that I'm doing it. And he had a philosophy of something called honest graft.
That's almost an oxymoron.
But it certainly is to some people. So you're taking what you can from the system, but the system is surviving. And he was around from the turn of the century, the turn of the 20th century to the 1940s. And I was able to an author by the name of, and a former reporter for On Point and WBUR in New Hampshire by the name of Jack Beatty wrote his biography on him called The Rascal King.
Right.
And I was able to get the audio rights to that. And we have that. And I was able to narrate 20 hours of Boston politics and Boston history. And I'm really intrigued with all with Boston history. So that this falls right into the stuff that we want to do. And he's just, he did two sets of times in the clink.
Yeah.
He was arrested twice and did time twice, once for impersonating someone taking I believe it was a postal test,
right,
to get them a postal job, and then the other one was for racketeering or some other cause. But just a tremendous personality, and maybe Frederick Law Olmsted.
Well, that's a good one too. Central Park.
Yeah,
Central Park.
And he developed the Emerald Necklace in Boston. And he did so much stuff for the Chicago World's Fairs. A few intriguing people. These are just names that are popping up. Those would be some good conversations.
All right, so I always end with a couple of questions.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you, or what did I miss, or what did I get wrong? So in terms of the conversation, before we let you go back to whatever you do so well in terms of being a narrator and everything else, and also as an actor, what did I miss or what did I get wrong? What did we leave out? We left something out you want to talk about.
Oh, we could talk for a college semester here, Larry.
All right, then you're going to come back.
We left out a lot, but that's not your fault. You have a certain type of segment that we have to fill with good entertainment, and hopefully we did that. I just let all your authors, because this is an author centric program. So let all your authors know that we are a small publishing house,
right,
for audio. So under Leonardo Audio, we have a New England imprint called Nor'easter Publishing.
Okay.
So we have a national brand, and then we have a regional brand that, if that does well, we're going to try to launch other regional brands to be able to do a full publishing. So we do EPUB under that umbrella as well. But I'm here. If authors want to narrate their own nonfiction, please come to me. I will train you and potentially even direct you. You could have me direct you for your first couple of hours on the project, and then you don't need me anymore. There's a lot of different ways we can set it up so that we can set you up for success in narrating your own book. Also, if you need me as a consultant in the audio for your book, if it's fiction, We are producing for all the larger publishing entities. So we, really understand nuance in audiobook storytelling. We understand regionalism. We understand when there's a particular type of or list of characters for a particular book. We have a roster where we can go out to those correct and the appropriate narrators and give you 3 to 5 options that will all be great, but will all be great in different ways.
Boy, that's well said. And we're going to promote you even after we're done talking to you. But I'm going to ask you one last thing, because I always do this. And I'm really looking forward to your answer based on your life experience and everybody you interacted with.
Sure.
If there's a knock on your front door, who would take your breath away?
My father.
So I'm going to follow up on that. I love that answer. Based on what you do in terms of being voiceovers and everything else, do you still hear your father's voice in your head?
Absolutely. Sorry for being emotional. Yeah, I hear him every day. Especially when I do things that are physical, because he was a very physical guy. He was a fish buyer and a boss lumper.
Okay.
On the Boston Fish Pier for over 50 years. So, just the hard work and dedication and hustle that he had. I hear it every day. But when it comes to what I read, and do I put him in my books? Sometimes. I put my uncle in my books more because he had a sibilant thing that he had in his voice. He had a little shh whenever he had to say his S's.
Yeah.
So, and he had a very funny delivery with some of his lines. So I find it easier to put him in stuff. My dad was more stoic, but I hear his encouragement.
Oh, well,
thank you, Larry.
Thank you. I want to thank Chris Ciulla for stopping by. I'm Larry Davidson. This is the podcast, Artful Periscope. Bye-bye. Take care.
You've been listening to the Artful Periscope podcast. The Artful Periscope podcast is brought to you by The Booth at the Sachem Public Library in Holbrook, New York, consistently voted the best on Long Island since 2015. You can find the Artful Periscope podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks goes to our producer, Chris Cristofaro, sound editors and engineer, Ryan O'Hagan. The song Alleluia is performed by Winessa, and you can find her music at starfrost.com. October Blues is performed by Dana Songs and can be found at danasongs.com. You can also find out about other author-related events by visiting Sachem Public Library's website at sachemlibrary.org. Join us next time as we pull the thread which weaves the tale that affects us all.
She tied you to her kitchen chair. She broke your throne and she cut your hair.